If you're a leader, it doesn't matter if you're on a battlefield or in a briefing room, you're eventually going to face this timeless challenge. When a crisis is finally over, how do you restore order? Do you come down with an iron fist to enforce the standard, or do you lead with a steady hand? So today, we're going to dig into a powerful leadership lesson straight from history that has some serious meaning for us right now. Let's just get right to the heart of it, with the question every single leader has to wrestle with at some point. When you're the one in charge, where is that line? When does delivering justice turn into just seeking revenge? That's the critical dilemma we're going to explore today. Here's what's so interesting about this whole debate. We tend to think of justice and mercy as total opposites, right? But they're not. Think of them as the two hands of legitimate power. Justice, well, that gives you order, accountability, standards. But mercy is what brings restoration, trust, and humanity. A truly great leader knows how and when to use both. And this quote from St. Thomas Aquinas just nails it. He tells us that mercy isn't some kind of substitute for justice, it's what actually completes it. See, justice without mercy, it's incomplete. It can be harsh, even destructive. And that idea, it is everything for the story we're diving into. So how can leaders even practice making these kinds of tough calls? Well, for centuries, the military has had this incredible educational tool that literally lets you walk in the footsteps of history. And that tool is the military staff ride. But listen, this is way more than just a history tour. It's this immersive experience where leaders are standing on the actual ground where huge decisions were made. They're analyzing the terrain, the choices, the consequences, all to sharpen their own judgment for the future. And believe me, this isn't some new fad. This goes way back. You're talking Frederick the Great in the 1700s, Clausewitz putting it down on paper, all the way to it becoming a core part of how we train our leaders in the military today. It has a long, proven legacy. But that's where this story gets really interesting, because there's this powerful new evolution of the whole concept, and it was pioneered by some Catholic service members at Langley Air Force Base. They developed what's called a spiritual fitness staff ride, where they integrate timeless Catholic moral teaching with that traditional military model to forge leaders of real character. So what they do is shift the focus. It's not just about tactics anymore. These rides challenge a leader's entire moral and spiritual framework. You're diving deep into the church's just war doctrine, our core values, and the why behind a commander's decision. It's all about igniting that war-fighter ethos by connecting our faith directly to what we do in the profession of arms. All right, so to really see this in action, we're going to dive into a powerful case study they use in these staff rides. We're going all the way back to 1676, to a colony in Virginia that was an absolute powder keg about to explode. And it perfectly illustrates this tension between justice and mercy. So on one side, you've got Governor Sir William Berkeley. This guy has been in charge for over 30 years. He's experienced, loyal to the king, and for him, it is all about top-down authority. Order is everything. And on the other side, you've got Nathaniel Bacon. He's young, new to the colony, and he sees a government that is just deaf to the people's fears out on the frontier. He's passionate, and he believes that your conscience demands you act, even if that means defying the guy in charge. And man, things just spiral out of control, and fast. The settlers on the frontier feel totally abandoned. Bacon steps up to lead them, directly defying the governor's orders. This whole thing leads to an armed showdown in the capital, Jamestown, and before you know it, it explodes into a full-blown civil war that ends with Bacon burning the capital city to the ground. But then, right at the peak of his power, poof! Nathaniel Bacon suddenly dies of disease. The rebellion just collapses, almost overnight. And this is where Governor Berkeley faces his ultimate test of leadership, and it's where our lesson truly begins. With his power totally restored, Governor Berkeley decides he's going to make an example out of the rebels. He orders the public hanging of 23 men. 23 public executions, all to restore order through fear. Now check out who said this. This wasn't some rebel sympathizer. This was King Charles II, Berkeley's own king. Even the monarch, whose own father had been executed in a civil war, saw that Berkeley hadn't delivered justice. No, he delivered pure vengeance. In our military ethics, in the just war tradition, there's a name for this, jus post bellum, which means justice after war. And it teaches that how a leader ends a conflict is just as important as how they fight it. The goal isn't just to win, it's to build a peace that's actually going to last. And if you look at it through that lens, Berkeley he failed on every single count. The punishment was wildly out of proportion. His actions created fear and resentment. They didn't restore trust. And because he left zero room for reconciliation, he guaranteed that while the fighting was over, the peace was going to be incredibly fragile. His victory was a total moral defeat. So what in the world does a story from the 1600s have to do with leadership today? Okay, let's bring this lesson right off the history pages and onto the flight line with a modern parable. So let's imagine this scenario. You've got Major Reeve. A young airman makes a serious mistake on a maintenance checklist, and a whole mission gets aborted. Reeve knows he has to enforce the standard. So he decides to make a very public example of this airman to send a clear message. Failure is not an option. And on the surface, you know what? It works. Paperwork is perfect. Checklists get triple checked. But the squadron falls into what the story calls a brittle quiet. People just stop talking. They're terrified of making a mistake, afraid to speak up. He has their compliance, but he's lost their loyalty. He has control, but he's totally lost their trust. And that's when he remembers something his grandfather used to say, and it just hits the nail on the head. Authority is like a hammer. Anybody can swing it, make a lot of noise, but real leadership, true wisdom, is knowing when to stop. So this realization, it changes everything for Major Reeve and his unit. He finally gets it. He realizes that leadership fueled by fear only gets you compliance. It keeps mouths shut, and it's brittle. But when your authority is guided by mercy, and I don't mean softness, I mean a disciplined desire to rebuild, well, that builds loyalty. It encourages integrity, and it creates a team that is genuinely resilient because you're using discipline to restore people, not to ruin them. And that brings us right back to the beginning, doesn't it? Whether you're leading a squadron, a team at work, or your own family, your authority is a trust that's been given to you. It's not a weapon. So the real question this history leaves us with, for you and for me, is a personal one. What will you choose to build with it?